Hey everybody, welcome to another GG.CO.UK video with me, Daryl Carter. A really special guest this week as part of GG's stable tours. Unfortunately, we're not able to visit the fantastic Kim Bailey, but he has kindly given up some of his time this week to have a quick chat with me. So Kim, how are you? And thank you very, very much for giving me a little bit of your time.
Yeah, no, good. Thank you very much indeed. Actually, you're probably better off being where you are today because it's pissing a rain here at the moment. So it's not looking very beautiful out there.
How's things been, really? Just generally, first off, with the COVID and everything like that. Obviously, we're in a global pandemic at the moment. Has it affected things at the yard?
Well, it's made things very difficult for the fact that owners are paying an awful lot of money to have a horse in training, and they can't come and see their horses. So, that is the #1 criteria for me. It's the fact that we're a hobby sport for an awful lot of people. It's their it's their downtime to have a horse in training, and the pleasure they get of seeing the horses on the gallops and coming to the yard is a criteria that they really want to have. And to lose that for all those owners is actually very disappointing. It makes my job harder because it means I spend more time on the telephone or doing Zoom calls or basically spending more time doing media training, really, more than anything else, because I've got to keep my owners as happy as possible, and they've got to see exactly what's going on in the yard. So missing that moment is for them, being in the yard is very, very sad for them.
Yeah, I've seen you've actually got a YouTube channel. I've seen you put up a few videos of first and second lots coming up the hill. That's fantastic. If anybody's listening wants to go and check that out on Kim Bailey's YouTube video, really good footage to see the horses working up the gallops there. Has it changed your... In fact, for those that don't know, Kim, what is your day-to-day routine? I mean, what time is Kim Bailey up in the morning? What time is he up and at it?
Yeah, I'm up at about 5:15, and from there onwards, it's move on all day long. I do a blog, so therefore I write my blog at about 5:15. It's all about today. It's happened after it's happened or not before. So whichever way you want to look at it, it's a very futuristic blog because I predict what's going to happen through the day when it hasn't happened. So I write about owners coming to see their horses and they haven't even got out of bed. But it's actually a really important part of my job. It might sound stupid because at the end of it, it's a way of keeping everybody in the yard and the owners involved in what's going on. So as I said earlier on, we're a part of their downtime, and their downtime means being involved in the yard all day long, really, and seeing what's going on. So the blog is a hugely important part of their morning. And if I'm late putting it up, I get complaints quite quickly.
What time do you finish out your day? Is there a time that you go right?
Well, I'm usually in the office until about 7:30, 7:45. So I'm here all day long. I don't live on site, so I live 3 miles away. So I go home for lunch, but I'm here pretty well all day, really. And there's always something going on. Even with modern communications, you're never away from the phone now, even when you take your mobile phone at home. But the only difference is I try and recognise everybody's numbers. So there could be the odd occasion when I can't see it.
Obviously, it's a big operation you're running there. It's a massive team effort, as it is with every single yard. I want to talk to you about one person in particular that is obviously your retained jockey, and that's David Bass, who is, for me, has been absolutely fantastic again this year, and is really up there with the top jockey. In my eyes, he's one of the best out there. When he's coming to the final flight on particularly one of your horses, and he's asking for a big jump, they always respond well for him. How valuable is David Bass to your team?
Well, I think you have to look upon everything in life happens by mistake, and David Bass' involvement with me was very much a big mistake because I had a runner at Toaster some years ago, and it was a bank holiday Monday, and I had this horse running called Crazy Jack, who I thought was an absolute certainty. And the jockey who was meant to ride it got injured in the race before, and there was only 2 jockeys in the weighing room who were available to ride him. One was David Bass, so I think the other jockey most probably turned down the ride. So David Bass walked into the paddock and took the ride, and that's how we started, really. And then he won on it. He dropped his stick on it, believe it or not, and still won on it. And I thought, well, that was the last I'll see of him. And he rode it again, and I think he won on it a second time. Then I thought he's bound to ring me up and ask to come and ride out. I never heard from him again. So he always didn't really want to have the connection with me. But it's gone from there. And I'm joking apart, I get on very well with David. He's a very important part of my cog and wheel and everything else. And he's grown in character and strength. And, he's a huge asset to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Would he have any input with you when it comes to placing horses? I mean, certain conditions for horses, as we all know, are their optimum conditions. I mean, we'd all love to have the track, the trip, the ground, and the class of race perfect every single time. And I guess it's the same for you. But if you had to put one of those above everything else, what would be the main priority when placing your horses? Would it be track, trip, ground?
Well, the end of it, the most important thing is to find the ideal course, track, and everything else for your horse. Now, however much you try, you can't guarantee to get that right every single time. There are few enough race courses that go left-handed or right-handed. Some horses have a preference on one or the other. David obviously plays a major factor. I've got a very good assistant in Matt Nichols as well. We will sit around a table and we'll discuss the races coming up and the horses that we're involved in. And we do have a situation whereby we do have a horse, for example, has a preference of going right-handed or left-handed, and we can't find races for him. We might have to go the other way. But having David involved in that decision is really important, because he will make the decision easier for us, because he'll say, well, actually, it can't possibly go that way, or it can. And he'll go out knowing the situation, rather than having someone who's never sat on the horse before. And, he's preempted about the possibility of what it might go and do, and that makes a big difference.
Brilliant. In terms of your training on your day-to-day, when you're at the gallops and watching these horses work, what is it that you see in a horse that lets you know that he's ready to run, he's race fit, he's ready to go?
Well, I think if you turn everything back to human being terms, and you go back to yourself when you were a kid and you used to take your form of exercise, you're laughing. You shouldn't do that. It is. You know when you're fit, and it's no different. I see these horses every single day, but of course we're reliant on the people who ride the horses out as well. But we have a regime, and we have a routine. We know how long it takes to get our horses fit. And the more you work them, obviously the less time they blow after a piece of work. So, I can tell by the time a horse is walking back down the gallop, how quickly it clears and starts breathing normally as to how fit it is. And that really is the easiest way around. And then after that, it's just a question of keeping them ticking over.
Brilliant. Just going back to placing your horses, there's a lot of stigma around, a lot of tipsters and pundits will talk about stats. So, for instance, Kim Bailey's got a 42% stroke rate at Musselburgh. A lot of people, I suppose, imagine trainers sitting there of an evening with a glass of wine, looking through the racing post at their stats and purring over their stats. Is that something that ever comes into your thinking when placing a horse?
No.
Never?
Definitely not. I mean, at the end of it, I hate stats, because at the end of it, we're in the business of running horses, and you can have. There was a situation recently when Ollie Murphy his horses were out of form, and I think he had 27 seconds. I mean, that's not a yard out of form. It's just been very unlucky to go and finish second. And those stats go against you, and I think that's always a dangerous area to sit there and look at stats. You've got to be mindful of not worrying what anybody else thinks and know where you are. Fine. Taking horses to Musselburgh, I'd only take horses to Musselburgh I thought had a chance of winning. You're not going to go all that way just for the sake of running down the field, are you? So, if you're going to go a long way, your stats are going to look better than perhaps if you're going to have Worcester down the road when you're running probably pretty moderate horses in pretty moderate races.
That's a very, very good point. In terms of a lot of your horses running in nosebands, I've noticed, if not all of your horses, what's the thought process behind that?
Well, I was asked that on television the other day. I thought it was an April Fool's joke when I answered it. It was some years ago when I first started training. I had two runners at Worcester. In those days, they didn't have a minimum or maximum runners. I think there were 27 runners in a novice hurdle at Worcester. And it was by the last race, it was virtually black. And I couldn't see a single horse in the race, let alone my own horses. And there was one horse that stood out, and that was one of Ian Balding's, and he had a sheepskin noseband on. That was the only horse I saw during the race. So my horse started wearing a sheepskin noseband the following day. And you joke and laugh about it, but that's why, as simple as that. And it was come on, at the end of it, it's something that now looks quite smart. People recognize my horses. It's part of my trait of my horses, really.
Absolutely. And the reason I'm laughing is because I was going to suggest that may have been the reason, but I didn't want to say it just in case. Have you got any other type of headgear that you like to reach for horses? Do you prefer cheek pieces or blinkers on any horse?
I'm not afraid to use cheek pieces. I think they're a very good aid. A lot of horses will react to cheek pieces in a very normal way. If they don't put a pair of blinkers on a horse, they can react the wrong way. And it helps the horse concentrate. In France, they're basically used as blinkers. And a lot of horses go around life, not necessarily concentrating, and a pair of cheek pieces will make them concentrate, or certainly help. I'm not a person who really enjoys using blinkers. You'll see that I always use a visor rather than the blinker, which is a load of crap, quite honestly, because it's exactly the same thing with one tiny hole in the back. Now, if you think that's going to make a difference to a horse, it's nothing. But it's the word visor, the word blinkers. Blinkers has that stigma. Visor doesn't quite have the same stigma as a blinker. Why, I don't know, but anyway, that's why.
I saw a video of you not long ago doing an interview, and you mentioned that sometimes when you come second, you have to sort of grin and bear it and act like everything's okay. But I get the feeling that you're a man that doesn't take well to losing. So how do you deal with losing runs if you're going on a bit of a bad patch?
Be in my office here at 5:15 and see what language comes out, because at the end of it, I do not like seconds. I'm very happy to finish third, but the problem with finishing second is that you haven't achieved anything. You finish second. Do you remember who was second in last year's Grand National? You have to think really hard who it was. You never remember who was second. Who was the runner-up at Wimbledon the year before last? Who was second in the British Grand Prix 3 years ago? You don't remember. And you get all the penalties for finishing second. So the handicapper erases you £6 or £7 for finishing second. You picked up a third of the prize money or a quarter of the prize money. You've been penalised as the winner, and you've achieved nothing. So it's a shit place to be, being second. And after I finished second in the Grand National, I promised you with Last Samurai, I did not speak for 4 days.
Is it frustrating when I suppose you've got owners and people around you that are extremely happy to be placed in a race, and I suppose you're behind a bit of a fake smile, you're thinking, oh God. I
have a theory in life. I don't have a theory in life. I have an assistant, Matt Nichols, who's unbelievably good at his job, and he's worse than I am about finishing second. And he's been racing representing me, and the horse has finished second, and he's almost stormed off the racecourse. And I said, hang on a second, you can't do that. It's really important. You sit there and you put a smile on your face, however much it hurts, because they're thrilled to finish second. And you've got to see at the end of it, people do like to finish in the first three in a race. So you go to the Cheltenham Festival, finish second in the Gold Cup. How pleased are you as an owner? You're thrilled. How annoyed are you as a trainer?
I'll tell you what, let's move it on a little bit to Cheltenham. What's the feeling like as a trainer going into Cheltenham? Are you excited for those 4 days? Do you get nervous? Is it a different feeling to the rest of the season?
Okay, well, turn back 12 months, because at the end of it, 12 months is where we have to go, because in those days we still had crowds. The build-up for Cheltenham is phenomenal. The atmosphere on the race day is huge. All these ridiculous Cheltenham previews go on. They virtually start the first week in February. The general public love it. The build-up for that meeting is more than anything else. I mean, we have 30 people here every single day calling in to see their horses on the way to the races. There's buzz, 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 and if you've got fancy runners, then it's even better. And to have a winner there, well, it is as good as it gets, really. Move 12 months forward this year. We won't be having Cheltenham previews. We won't be any people going there. If you go and have a winner at Cheltenham, which God, I hope I do, to stand there on your own with no trophy, no crowd to celebrate, the biggest day of your life, it's not going to be much fun.
Let's talk about a couple of your horses. Imperial Aura done absolutely nothing wrong this season. An uncharacteristic, really, unseat at Kempton. I think David Bass took the brunt of that rather than Imperial Aura, thankfully. But
you might think that, but judging by the number of rude emails and irate phone calls I received, you would have thought I rode the damn thing. I mean, it was unbelievable.
It was just one of those unfortunate incidents. What's the plan for Imperial Aura going forward? Have you laid out any?
He won't run for Cheltenham now. There's no race for him to run in between now and then, and we have to make the decision as to which race we go for. I think it's pretty well certain he'll go to Ryanair, but Ian Robinson, who runs the syndicate, asked me to put the entry in for the Gold Cup, and I can see where he's coming from, because at the end of it, if we are in a situation where we're very limited on numbers, horses from other countries can't come across, it does slightly change the whole situation. You know, he is a good horse, and you know, what happened on Saturday was incredibly frustrating, and it happens, and you have to walk away from it. The worst part of the whole thing for me was watching the horse gallop around the racecourse with the reins between his legs, because that can cause serious damage. You know, he had a rub on the inside of his leg where the reins had been rubbing up and down inside his leg, but that was all, thank God. But it could have been an awful lot worse. And then, of course, the worst part about that, you know, how much the athlete that I am, that I ran to the course to go and try and stop him, and try and get a car to go and take me around the racecourse. Because of COVID, they're not allowed in the car, so we couldn't go. So we actually had to wait for someone to catch him, who was nothing to do with the racecourse really. So it was a worrying moment, and it was very unfortunate.
I suppose the positives you could take from that, from the unseated, the fact that it was uncharacteristic for him. You know, you can quite easily. He's not one to make mistakes at his fences, so I suppose you can just put a line through that and move on. What about Happygolucky? He's a nice improving horse this season.
He's a horse I love, and I've just spoken to the owner before I came on live with you, and to say that I don't wish to run him on Saturday at Warwick because the ground's now gone heavy. And he ran once on heavy last year at Sandown. It took him an awful long time to get over it. You know, if it was heavy at Cheltenham, well, that's a different ball game. But to have it now with Cheltenham in the corner, obviously I don't want to run. Frustrating because at the end of it, David Bass rode in work yesterday and said he felt, you know, as best he's ever felt all season. But you can't take that chance.
In terms of Cheltenham, sorry. Tim. In terms of Cheltenham, would it be the National Hunt Chase? Would it be the RSA? Would it be the handicap?
Sadly, if he'd run on Saturday, that was going to tell us where we were going to go, really, because if he was to win on Saturday, he'd go to the RSA. I think they might even change its name since then. Rather than it's no longer the 4 mile, it's the 3.5 mile. So, and of course, the other beauty is now it was an amateur riders' race, now it can't be.
Okay. El Presente, I wanted to bring up. Now, I think I might be right in saying that you'll probably put him away for a bit better ground in the summer. But how on earth have you improved this horse 24 pounds in 5 runs?
I simply don't know. He staggered us all, really. Life's all about fate and funny things that happen in your life, because at the end of it, he never showed us anything when we first got him, to the extent that I made an entry at the sales for him at Doncaster at the end of his 4-year-old career. And we then ran him in a bumper just to see whether he could show something on the racecourse. He finished 3rd and ran very well. So we didn't take him to the sales as a result of it. He then won a hurdle race or 2 the following season. Always been, although he's not very big, he's always been very immature, and he's a very, very bad workhorse. And he's got fantastic owners, and they were very keen to run him a couple of times last year. He ran a really nice run first time out at Huntingdon and finished 3rd in what looked a very good novice chase. And because the handicapper couldn't change his handicap mark from from a hurdle race rating to a chase rating on 1 run, we then ran him in a handicap at Wincanton, where we thought he was an absolute certainty. And he made a mistake and unseated his jockey. Now, this is where fate comes in, because if you remember right, we had a very, very wet winter, and we never ran him again. And we then took him to Huntingdon at the end of the season, and I tried to persuade the owners not to run him because the ground was soft. And they were all there. It was the first time they'd all been racing together. And they said, "But please, can we run?" And I said, "Well, it probably would be a disaster, but at the end of it, at the end of it, he's your horse, and you're paying the training fees. If you want to run, by all means do." Well, he ran and pulled up. David came back in and said, "This horse makes a noise, hates the ground," which we knew anyway. But the noise bit, which we'd never heard before in our lives, was the thing that made the difference, because we then operated on his wind, and that's where the improvement came from.
Unbelievable.
So I have become a fatalist in my life, and you realise little things like that make a very odd. Little things odd like that make a big difference, because that horse has never made a noise in his entire life, but that one day on heavy ground sorted him out.
It's crazy. Ajero is a lovely, lovely horse, half brother Charbel. I've got a question for you about this horse, because he's got what I feel is at a very, very attractive handicap mark of 129. Now, the horse that he beat of Nicky Henderson's is ended up in a grade 2. He's also got a very fair mark of 128. Why do trainers prefer to go with their novices, go into a graded race as opposed to exploiting a perhaps lenient handicap mark?
Handicaps are always much harder to win, and you'll see cases where you think a horse is unbelievably well handicapped, and stepping from novice into handicap, the whole race is run at a different speed. It's much more competitive. My horse has run around twice, well, 3 times in fact, and he's really not taken on very many horses. So when you suddenly show them in a handicap, they've got 15 or 16 horses around them, and they can get slightly phased by it. Whereas you go to a listed race, you'll find there's only 4 or 5 runners, and you could pick up some decent prize money or whatever. And also, of course, the owners play a major factor in it. They might say, look, actually, we don't want to run in a handicap. We want to go and do that and run in, a conditioned novices. With Ajero, I mean, we looked at handicap marks, but I don't think he really likes heavy ground, so he's having a break at the moment, and won't see him till the spring.
He's a lovely horse to look forward to. Vindication. How is Vindication? And I want to ask this question. When he went for an away day at Newbury before the Ladbroke, and he scored, and a lot of people on social media pulled up about his jumping, etc. Did you feel the need to sort of pressured to then release a schooling video of him jumping later on to sort of shut those people up, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, the social media has its pluses and minuses. That trial day at Newbury, we took him to Newbury 2 years ago in school. He did exactly the same, but because no one was there, or no one was there with a video camera or a TV camera, it wasn't noticed. Although 1 or 2 people did pick it up in the press because they were there. It was, there were quite a lot of horses working before Cheltenham, but then it didn't stop him running well at Cheltenham. He then ran an absolute blinder. He ran in the novice chase that year, and if you look at the horse that beat him in front of him and finished behind, it was probably the best novice chase that's been run at Cheltenham for some years. So he did nothing wrong. He's a very odd horse. I mean, good horses always have a quirk, and taking him to Newbury then was a disappointment. And I was quite keen with the view that they were having a PR day, and Keith Austin is a person I support hugely, and he asked me if I'd bring him, and I said, well, I will bring him on condition I can school him over a fence, because I want to try and eradicate that situation we had here last year. Well, all it did was exasperate the situation, make it worse, because at the end of it, he did behave very badly. It was very unfortunate for the horse, because Kieran Getting rode, who'd never sat on him before in his life. It's not Kieran's fault, because at the end of it, Kieran rides very well. But David Bass is the only person who sat on him and would have expected him to do that. We schooled him at home afterwards, and I videoed it, and as I do all my schooling sessions anyway, and then 90% of them are on my YouTube channel. I just basically throw it on my Twitter account as well. So, that's a question of keeping the media or the social media side happy.
Yeah. Espoir De Romay is probably the last horse I'll touch on just for this bit. I love this horse. I watched him win on handicap debut at Wincanton last year. I was there, I was working, and I just fell in love with him that day. He looked like he was all about fences for the following season. He's done absolutely nothing wrong. I felt that the ground may have been too heavy for him at Haydock in hindsight, perhaps. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it wasn't ideal. It was trying to find races for him, and on the day it looked as though it was a suitable arrangement for him, because Venetia's horse at that stage hadn't shown much the season before, and I had, there are very few races for novices. It might sound stupid. There are plenty of beginners chases, and having won your race, you're not a beginner anymore. So we were slightly limited to where we could go to, and we wanted to go to a Grade 1 track if we possibly could to gain experience. So the Haydock race looked absolutely perfect for him. And as often the case on heavy ground, Venetia's horses transform themselves, and the form, we were gutted he got beat. And I mean, David Bass couldn't believe he got beat, and he did get beat, end of story. But look out and see what the horse that beat him has come out and done now. He's now rated 155 and is a serious chaser. So we probably were very unlucky. We were due to run at Kempton on Saturday, and he had a marginal scope, so we didn't run him. So anyway, that would be fine. But I agree with you. He's a lovely horse, and he's 17-2, and he's an out-and-out chaser. And again, he's going to be a better horse next year than this year, I think, possibly.
I think it's really frustrating that they've got rid of the novice handicap chaser, the race you won last year with Imperial Aura, because I genuinely thought that that's where this lad would be heading.
Yeah, if I think probably we might be too high, without looking at my notes, we might be a pound too high for the race if it was still on. And yeah, it's really sad we lost that race. And you look at that race last year with Imperial Aura, look at the form of the race, look at the horses that come out of it. And that was a serious race. I think it's disappointing to lose the race, but at the end of it, I don't own the race course or run it. So it's very the next races, at the time, that people stand around and say, "Oh, it's only a novice handicap chase," but you know, we were very keen to get into that race with a respectable mark, and we took him to Cheltenham twice and gave some experience. And you know, history relates it's done him the world of good.
Yeah, I mean, you only have to look back for the previous year with the Plutard winner, who's now going to run in the Gold Cup. I mean, it's been a fantastic race over the years. I'm devastated they've got rid of it. You've done the Gold Cup, the Champion Hurdle, and the Grand National. What keeps the fire burning for Kim Bailey every day?
Let's do it again. Come on, we're only here in this life once. You've got to enjoy it. If you can't have an ambition to do something again, then why do you get out of bed?
Absolutely agree. Kim, could you give the GG followers one dark horse, perhaps from the yard, that you've got a little glint in your eye about that perhaps is worth following for the future?
For the future, not for this season.
Or one for both.
One for one for both. You should give me a bit of warning on that one. There's a horse I like in the yard who's only had one run so far called Voiberg, and face of it, he didn't run particularly well or ran disappointingly, probably at Warwick, but he was very immature, very inexperienced, and didn't know quite what he was doing. I think he's potentially going to be quite a nice horse, and I think in time he'll be one to follow. Voiberg, Voiburj. He's by Sageberg.
Fantastic. Kim Bailey, thank you ever so much for your time. Really, really appreciate it. Guys, do get onto Kim Bailey's YouTube channel. Check out some of the footage from the yard. It's fantastic. Fantastic insight to the yard. So, Kim, again, thank you very much, and we'll speak to you soon.
Yeah, and don't forget they can read my blog for all the boredom that gets you.
Of course.